Welcome back. Today, we are taking a close look at the one mechanism that really dictates whether you achieve your goals or if they just, stay as daydreams.
We're focusing on the executive power of your own consciousness, the will.
And we're drawing from a fascinating text, Charles Fillmore's The 12 Powers of Man. It was written over a century ago, but honestly, it feels like it's addressing the problems we all face right now, today.
It really does. And our mission here isn't just to talk philosophy. It's to pull out the practical, actionable knowledge that lets you stop wishing for success and actually start executing it.
Right. It's about building a real functional discipline. I think we all know that feeling. You set a big goal, maybe it's a huge project at work, or finally getting consistent at the gym.
Or even just improving a relationship.
Exactly. And you feel that initial surge of excitement, that high, we call motivation. But then what happens?
Fire goes out.
The fire goes out. 3 days later, sometimes even just 3 hours later, you feel that inertia creeping in. You hit a wall of indecision, of fatigue, and you're right back on the couch, scrolling, with that awful feeling of just drifting.
That feeling is so universal. And what's amazing is that modern psychology actually explains why that wall feels so real. It isn't just you failing.
It's not a character flaw.
Not at all. It's a failure of resource management. This metaphysical idea of the will lines up perfectly with the psychological reality of decision fatigue.
Let's talk about that, specifically the studies on ego depletion. Because once you understand this, it changes everything. The core idea is that willpower is a limited resource.
It really is. It's like a battery. In the classic experiment, researchers had one group of people resist the temptation of fresh-baked cookies.
Which is hard enough.
Right. And they had to eat radishes instead.
Yeah.
A small act of self-control. They used up a little bit of their willpower battery resisting the chocolate.
And the other group.
The control group faced no temptation at all. Then, immediately after, both groups were given a completely separate, really frustrating task. They had to try and solve an unsolvable puzzle.
And the results were just stark, weren't they?
Completely. The group that had resisted the cookies, the ones whose willpower battery was already a little drained, they gave up on the puzzle way faster.
How much faster?
They quit after about 8 minutes. The other group, who hadn't used any willpower yet, they kept going for almost 20 minutes.
Wow.
It proved that self-control, this thing we call will, it draws on the exact same finite energy source, whether you're fighting a craving or you're tackling a difficult mental problem.
So that feeling of drifting, of quitting when things get hard, it isn't necessarily a moral failure. It's just a sign that your battery's low.
Your executive battery is depleted, and we often drain it on tiny, meaningless choices all day long without even realizing it.
So what we need is a system, a framework that protects that resource and aims it where it actually matters.
And that's what we're building today.
Okay, so by the end of our conversation, you are going to walk away with 3 really powerful outcomes. First, we're going to give you the fundamental, non-negotiable definition of the will as your mind's executive function. We're going to put a name and a location on this power.
Second, we are going to draw a crystal clear line between will, which is stable, dependable control, and motivation, which is, frankly, just an unreliable mood. You'll stop waiting to feel like it.
And third, we're going to give you a precise step-by-step framework. It's a synthesis of this older wisdom and modern psychology that will help you automate your goal pursuit to finally overcome that procrastination and fatigue.
Let's start by pinning down what this power actually is.
Okay, let's define the solution. What exactly did Fillmore mean when he called the will the executive force?
He was incredibly direct about it. The will is not some secondary capacity, some backup power. It is the executive power of the mind, the single focal point for all conscious action.
The command center.
It's the command center. When your mind is acting, the will is the faculty taking charge.
The sources have that very bold line, the will is the man. What does that actually mean in a practical psychological sense?
It means that the will is the agent that moves all your other mental abilities into action. Your memory, your judgment, your imagination, they're all passive.
They're just sitting there waiting.
They're waiting for an order. The will is what activates them. Imagination might draw up a beautiful blueprint, but it's the will that says, okay, we are building this one now.
So it determines your entire direction. A strong will can direct even average intelligence to do incredible things.
Exactly. And a weak will can leave even the most brilliant mind scattered and ineffective. Your will, through what you choose to do day after day, literally defined who you become.
And this power has a physical location in the body, according to this system.
That's right. Its physiological center is located in the center front brain, right above the eyes. This spot signifies its executive command and control function. It's the bridge between pure thought and conscious action.
It's represented by the disciple Matthew. Why him?
This is such a great example of the practical symbolism in the text. Matthew was a tax collector.
Right. Not the most popular guy.
No, but think about his job. Meticulous accounting, detailed records, collecting funds, enforcing Roman law, down to the letter. He was an administrator, a precise, follow-through kind of person.
The one who executes the policy.
He's the perfect symbol for the mind's executive contractor, the will. The one who ensures the mental blueprint from the imagination gets built exactly as designed.
That makes so much sense. Okay, but the sources say not all will is the same. There's this crucial difference between the personal will and the universal will.
This is maybe the most important distinction in the whole framework. The personal will is what most of us use by default. It's short-sighted, it's often selfish, and it operates from a purely intellectual, ego-driven place.
It's that brute force, my way or the highway approach.
It's pushing, striving, trying to force an outcome based on your own limited knowledge. It's the ego trying to muscle its way through life.
So what's the alternative?
The alternative is aligning that personal will with what the sources call the universal will, or the all-knowing mind. And this isn't passive surrender. It's an active choice to step away from the ego's narrow viewpoint.
How do you even tell the difference in your daily life? That sounds a little abstract.
It really comes down to how it feels. When you're using your personal will, you feel tension, anxiety. You feel like you have to control everything.
And you get exhausted.
You get exhausted.
Yeah.
But when you're aligned with that universal will, the action feels inspired. It feels almost effortless, guided by a wisdom that's bigger than your own intellect. The result isn't just a win, it's harmonious.
And this is symbolized by that phrase, not my will, but thine be done.
Exactly. It's that moment of detaching from the personal outcome, which paradoxically gives your will access to unlimited resources because it's no longer running on the ego's nearly dead battery.
Okay, so if we stick with that forceful personal will, the sources are incredibly specific about the consequences, and they're not just mental, they're physical.
This is probably the most urgent warning in the entire text. When you use your will to force things, to be stubborn, to rely on aggressive self-criticism, you don't create discipline. You create tension.
A state of perpetual tension, both mentally and physically?
Yes. You're essentially fighting against the natural flow of things, and your body is what pays the price for that internal war.
How so?
The sources say these stubborn, rigid states of mind literally congest the life flow in the body. They can lead to cramps, muscle tightness, things like that.
And there was one detail that was almost alarming.
The idea that holding hard thoughts that come from this forced intellectual will can lead directly to hardened arteries.
Okay, let's unpack that. Is that a metaphor, or is the source suggesting a direct medical link between being stubborn and having heart disease?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And modern science actually gives us the mechanism. While the text implies a direct mind-over-matter link, we can now see the physiological pathway.
Through the stress response.
Exactly. Those hard thoughts, that chronic stress, that rigidity, that inner conflict, they activate your fight or flight system. This leads to a flood of cortisol and adrenaline.
Which causes inflammation.
And we know now that chronic inflammation is a major factor in atherosclerosis, the hardening of the arteries. So the source was incredibly ahead of its time. The psychological tension, driven by a fearful, stubborn will, creates real physical disease.
So that feeling of tension, that sensation, the sources describe as bands being drawn across the forehead when you're trying to force an affirmation, that's a physical warning sign.
It's your body telling you you're using the wrong tool. And if you keep doing it, it leads to strained nerves and eventually burnout. The takeaway is that intellectual brute force is always self-destructive.
So that's misusing the will. What about not using it at all? That feeling of drifting we started with.
If you don't intentionally direct your will, if you basically abdicate your role as the executive, you just default to what the sources call the race thoughts or the carnal mind.
Which is just the stream of collective consciousness.
It's the stream of fear, of limitation, of old habits, and the selfish ego, which is often called the adversary.
So your autopilot is always steering you downhill.
Always. Your executive function is still running, but it's taking orders from the lowest, most reactive, most fearful part of you. This is what condemns you to what Fillmore calls the prison of materiality.
Which is that feeling of being stuck, of drifting aimlessly.
That's it, exactly. The only way out is to actively engage the will and choose to be led by a higher wisdom, not by the reactive ego.
This brings us to a huge modern confusion, the difference between will and motivation. We mix them up all the time, and we end up waiting for a feeling that's just not reliable.
That's right, they're not the same thing at all. Motivation is fundamentally unstable.
So let's break down the three main contrasts. First, the type of force they represent.
Motivation is a mood. That's all it is. It's an aspiration, a state of thinking. Think of it like the wind in your sails. It might be strong today, but it could be completely gone tomorrow.
So it's an emotional high.
It is. The will, on the other hand, is not a mood. It's a choice. It's the dependable, fixed steering wheel of your consciousness. It's the part that works, even when there is absolutely no wind.
So planning a long-term goal based on motivation is like trying to sail across the ocean by only checking the first day's weather forecast.
Perfect analogy. And the second contrast is how they interact. They influence each other, but it's tricky.
How so?
Strong motivation can definitely help your volition. It can make the action feel easier. But, and this is the key, relying on it actually makes your will weaker over time.
Because you're training your brain to wait for a feeling before it acts.
Exactly. You create a habit of inaction. When the mood inevitably dips, the steering wheel just sits there because you're waiting for the emotional engine to start on its own.
Which leads to that feeling of being paralyzed.
The will is the tool you use precisely at the moment motivation fails you. And that brings us to the third contrast, their focus. Motivation is all about the destination. It's getting excited about the goal, the why. The will is all about the execution, the boring day-to-day how.
It's the discipline of showing up when you really don't want to.
That's it. It's doing the mundane work long after the emotional high has vanished.
Let's use that analogy of building a house to really lock this in. It's a great way to see how all these mental powers work together.
It is. So imagine your mind is a construction site with three main leaders. The first is imagination. Imagination is the architect.
The architect draws the detailed blueprint, the mental picture of the finished house, whether that's a new business, a healthy body, whatever. Without a blueprint, the will has no direction.
The second power is faith. Faith is the financing.
Financing, okay.
It's that deep core belief that the project is possible. It's what makes the resources, the energy, the time, the opportunities feel real and available before they even show up. It's the certainty that the blueprint can be built.
And then finally, the executive power comes in.
Finally, will is the general contractor.
And the contractor's job is pure execution.
That's all it is. The will directs the workers, manages the schedule, and makes sure the physical work gets done according to the architect's blueprint.
So if any piece is missing, the project stalls. No imagination, no plan, no faith, no resources.
And no will. The most beautiful blueprint and $1 billion budget just sit there, and the house never gets built. Will is the engine that makes things real.
That makes it so clear. Okay, knowing that, let's get into the practical application. How does using the will this way, by following a mental blueprint, actually change things in our lives?
It all comes down to consciously choosing the blueprint that's in your imaging chamber. Your will simply executes whatever image you hold there most consistently.
Okay, let's start with work, strategic vision. What's the common mistake we all make?
The mistake is just trying to work harder. Longer hours, more tasks. That's the brute force personal will in action. It's pure activity without any real direction.
Just being busy, not being effective.
Right. The will's real job is to execute a clear mental blueprint that the imagination designed first. This means you have to start by projecting the image of a successful outcome before you even begin the work.
So you hold the feeling of the finished project in your mind while you're doing the tasks.
Yes. If you're sitting there working with your imaging, the stress, the obstacles, the fear of failure, then your will is actually executing failure and making the whole task harder. It has to follow the blueprint of success.
This applies so powerfully to relationships too, the mental images we hold of other people.
It's critical. The biggest mistake is projecting images of jealousy or suspicion or negativity onto people in our lives. We stop reacting to the actual person and start reacting to the negative movie we've been playing in our own head about them.
And that just creates conflict.
It creates chronic conflict. So if you're stuck in a disagreement with a colleague, for example, your will's job is not to win the argument.
What is it then?
Its job is to intentionally regulate your mind, to make an executive decision to image beauty, goodness, and perfection in that person. Sounds strange, but it changes the entire energy of the interaction.
You're responding to their potential, not their past mistakes.
Exactly. It takes a huge amount of will to override that reactive ego, but it's the only way to create real harmony.
Okay, now for the big one. Habits. Procrastination. How does this apply?
This gets right back to the imaging chamber. The number one mistake when you're trying to break a habit, smoking, procrastination, anything, is that you are still holding the mental picture of yourself as a person with that habit.
You're still identifying with the very thing you're trying to change.
Yes. The general contractor, your will, is still looking at a blueprint that says, I'm a procrastinator who is trying not to procrastinate today.
And as long as that's the blueprint,
Your mind will keep building that reality. So the first absolute non-negotiable act of will is to mentally deny that old identity. You have to stop imaging yourself as that person.
that's the foundation. But we already established that will is a finite resource. It gets tired. Is there a way to automate this so we don't have to fight that battle every single time?
Yes, and this is where modern psychology gives us an incredible tool that fits perfectly. It's called implementation intentions.
Okay.
This is the automation shortcut. It lets you pre-program your will so that it acts automatically, bypassing the need for a conscious, draining decision in the moment.
How does that actually work? What does an implementation intention look like?
It's a simple but powerful formula. You turn a vague goal like, I want to write more, into a very specific if-then plan. It links a cue in your environment to a desired behavior.
So you're preloading the decision.
You're pre-delegating your will. For example, instead of fighting the urge to procrastinate, you create this plan. If I feel the urge to open social media, then I will immediately write one sentence of my report.
Oh, that's powerful. Because you make the decision just once when you're strong. Then the situation itself triggers the action.
Exactly. The science shows this creates a direct neural link between the cue, that moment of temptation, and the action. It turns the will from a painful decision into an automatic, delegated response. It's a game changer for difficult goals.
Okay, let's make this really tangible. Let's walk through a guided practice right now. We'll call it the Choose One Direction exercise, and it uses that WOOP framework you mentioned.
This is a great way to bridge the gap between the vision from your imagination and the execution from your will.
So if you're listening, grab a piece of paper or just hold this clearly in your mind. Let's go through the 4 steps. Step 1 is the W, the wish.
And this needs to be a challenging but doable goal, something concrete. Not be happier, but meditate for 5 minutes every morning this week.
Step 2 is the O, the outcome. This is where you bring in imagination to charge up the will. Vividly imagine the best possible result of achieving your wish. Feel the satisfaction, the pride, the relief. Really see it and feel it.
You're giving the general contractor that desirable blueprint.
Now for step 3. This is the hardest part, but it's the most important. The second O, the internal obstacle.
This requires radical honesty. You have to identify the internal barrier that has stopped you before. Not, I don't have time, but I feel overwhelmed, or I'm afraid of failing, or I doubt myself. What's the real mental block?
This is where it gets real. You have to confront that inner adversary.
You have to, because your will can't navigate around an obstacle it pretends isn't there. Now, step 4 is the P, the plan. This is your implementation intention.
You create that if-then plan that automatically responds to the obstacle you just identified.
Let's build the sentence right now. It's, if my internal obstacle shows up, then I will immediately take this specific, simple action.
So if your wish was to meditate, and your obstacle was, I feel too restless, your plan might be, if I feel restless when I sit down, then I will take 3 deep breaths and count them.
It's a small action that delegates control. It turns that moment of struggle into an automatic, reliable response. Practicing this for just a few minutes a day radically trains your will.
That is such a powerful bridge between idea and action. But even with a framework like this, we all hit pitfalls. Let's troubleshoot the 5 most common obstacles to building an enduring will.
Yes, these are the recurring mistakes people make when they try to rely purely on that intellectual, forceful effort.
Okay, obstacle 1, overforcing. We've talked about the tension, but what does this look like today?
It looks like hustle culture. The belief that you have to grind and force results instantly. People try to change a deep belief or a lifelong habit overnight through pure stress.
And it just leads to burnout. So what's the remedy if more force isn't the answer?
The remedy is patience and wisdom. The sources say the solution is daily relaxation, meditation, and patient spiritual study. You have to recharge the battery. Gaining this kind of inner control is not the work of an instant.
Obstacle 2. Selfish goals. Using your will just for short-sighted personal gain.
The issue here is that a purely selfish goal is, by its nature, out of alignment with that universal flow. So you might get a temporary win, but it often leads to dissatisfaction or negative consequences down the line.
So how do you course correct that?
You have to practice detachment. You deliberately affirm your unity with a larger purpose until you realize what you should do, not just what the ego wants to do. The moment a goal only serves the small self, the will loses its connection to its real power source.
Okay, obstacle 3 is about imbalance. Having zeal or enthusiasm, but no wisdom to guide it.
Zeal is that raw, powerful energy that gets things started. But on its own, it's like a giant locomotive with no engineer and no brakes. It just runs out of control.
All power, no steering.
Exactly. The will has to be combined with wisdom and judgment to bring about a good result. You don't want to kill the enthusiasm, but you have to use your will to direct it wisely. Otherwise, it just burns you out for no reason.
Obstacle 4, lack of persistence. This is huge, just giving up too soon.
This is all about resilience. The will requires what you might call sheer dogged perseverance. You have to be mentally prepared for setbacks.
You have to expect them.
You have to expect them and know that they're part of the process. Persistence is just the will continuing to execute on faith, even when the results aren't visible yet.
And the last one, obstacle 5. Being led by others, surrendering your will to the control or advice of anyone else.
This is a call for radical self-reliance. The sources are so clear on this. While using your own personal will selfishly is an error, it is an even greater error to hand your will over to another person, no matter how wise they seem.
Why is that so dangerous?
Because it severs your own unique connection to that inner wisdom. You have to recognize that ultimately you stand alone with the divine mind as your guide. Your own creative power can't come through clearly until you've erased the authority of others from your mind.
To outsource your will is to give up your own executive function.
Completely.
That is some powerful advice. Okay, we're going to run through the 7 key takeaways from this whole conversation right now to make them easy to remember and put into practice.
Let's lock it in.
1. The will is the executive function of your mind, the general contractor. Its physical center is in your front brain.
2. The will needs a clear blueprint from your imagination. If the blueprint you're holding is one of stress or failure, that is what the will is going to build.
3. Motivation is an unreliable mood. It's the wind. Will is a directed choice. It's the steering wheel. Stop waiting to feel like it.
4. Forcing your personal will creates physical tension. Remember, hard thoughts can lead to hardened arteries. The remedy is daily relaxation and patience.
5. To break a bad habit, you have to mentally fire your old identity first. Stop rehearsing the image of yourself as a person with that habit.
6. Automate your discipline. Use the ROBUP framework and if-then implementation intentions to bypass decision fatigue and conserve your willpower.
And 7. The path to a strong, enduring will requires patient, persistent study, meditation, and relaxation. Force leads to breakdown. Wisdom leads to effortless discipline.
We've really established that the will is the focal point of all action. It's constantly executing your mind's intentions.
So we want to leave you with one final thought to consider as you go about your day.
Because your will is always executing your thoughts, you are continuously sending out living thought forms into your body and into your world. This means your current reality, your health, your finances, your relationships. It isn't random. It is the direct, inescapable manifestation of the thoughts and images your will has been consistently building.
That really puts the responsibility for creating change right back into your hands. If you're interested in the full system, remember, will is just one of the 12 powers. We just talked about the general contractor.
And next time, we're going straight to the source of the blueprints, the mind's creative engine, imagination, the architect.
We'll explore how the imagination center, right between the eyes, works directly with the will in the front of your brain to turn your ideas into your reality.
Until then, choose one direction and take the wheel.
We'll see you next time.